You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Hi, welcome to On the Way. I am Beth White, your host this morning. I'm the Director for Evangelization for the Archdiocese of Chicago. And our radio show podcast, On the Way, it comes to you monthly to talk about issues of evangelization and missionary discipleship in our world. So this week, we are going to talk about the Black Catholic Congress. It is coming up on this weekend, and I have two guests with me who are going to be presenting at the Black Catholic Congress. Shannon Schmidt is our Parish Vitality Coordinator in Vicariate 6. Shannon and I are colleagues, so I'm very excited to have a conversation with Shannon. And we have Marcia. Marcia, I'm going to look down, Lane McGee, thank you. Marcia is a colleague of Shannon's, and the two of them, she's a podcaster, she is a presenter, she's an author. I could say the same thing about Shannon. They have a business together. They have a podcast called Plaid Skirts and Basic Black, so you can check it out. So welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having us, Beth.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I went to the Black Catholic Congress 6 years ago, I believe. It happens every 5 years, but due to COVID, it's been delayed 1 year. So it was a wonderful experience. I'm sending somebody else this year in my behalf. So, I wanted to talk to the two of you about evangelization and Black Catholic reality. So let's just dive in. So Shannon was gracious enough to send me the document, What We Have Seen and Heard, came out in September of 1984. It is a document from the 10 Black bishops of the United States of America, and it's pretty much their response to Evangelii Nuntiandi, which is the document that came from Paul VI, Evangelizing in the Modern World. So I thought maybe at the beginning of our show we could talk a little bit about that, linking it up, and then we can talk more concretely about the Black Catholic Congress. So Shannon, tell us a little bit about this document and its origins and what it's trying to tell the Black Catholic community.
Absolutely. So this document was written by really what were the first few Black Catholic bishops in our country's history. So as many of you may know, Black men were not allowed to be ordained to the priesthood realistically until our Venerable Augustus Tolton was the first known Black Catholic priest ordained in the 1890s. And so it took a while for there to be Black bishops of the United States. So in 1984, when there were now 10 Black bishops in the United States, and after about 2 decades of really Black Catholic institution building, the Black bishops decided that this was the time in which they needed to write a document that was specifically for African Americans and talking about our experience as African Americans, as Catholics who are Black, and to really give voice to what was sort of the fruit of the Spirit moving in the Black Catholic Church through the Black Catholic liturgical movement of the 1970s, and to as they say in the document, to say that we have come of age as a community and to give voice to what it means to be Black and Catholic and how evangelization happens in the African American community.
So one of the parts of the document, it talks about Black spirituality, and it has 4 components. So the first is contemplative, the second is holistic, the third is joyful, and the fourth is communitarian. Could either or both of you speak to what, just put a little flesh on the bones of what those 4 areas mean in Black spirituality.
So it's funny, when I learned about what the 4 components were, I immediately knew that to be true because I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up Protestant. And without us being told that that was what textbook Black spirituality was, that actually was reflective of how I lived and how my family lived and the women in my family and how we encountered our own spirituality. It was joyful. Well, it still is, and holistic. Like, it is in everything that we do. It's part of a community. I just, like, it just kind of confirmed things for me, I guess I could say. And one of the things that's really sticks out to me about it is the holistic part of it. That our spirituality has everything to do with everything that we do. It does.
It's very Jesuit in that way, right? God in all things. I'm sorry, Marcy. I didn't mean to. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. I was just saying it has everything to do with everything we do, and that is the best way that I can say it. Like, it doesn't matter. I live next door to my grandmother now. And so I would go over to her house, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing. She's like, hey, can you grab a water for me out of the fridge? I was like, absolutely. She's like, thank you so much, Jesus. Thank you. Hallelujah, in Jesus' name. And I go, yes, here is water. Right? It's just like, Shannon knows, it's just how my grandmother is. It doesn't matter. She wants to pray about everything I do. Did I get my laundry out? Did I do what I was supposed to do? She prays over the repairs I'm making to my house. And because God is in everything, what we do, like everything we do has to be in God's name. And so that's the part that always sticks out to me. And that's why I feel like Black spirituality, that leaves an indelible mark on every Black child. Like, every person has a praying grandmother, right? And so that's why there's the phenomenon. People say, every time rap stars win an award, they thank God. And I go, yeah, that is an indelible mark. Their grandma told them. Like, they know what's up. Yes,
every
God
athlete,
is in that rap music.
Every athlete does too, right? Yes. That's awesome. Shannon?
I think all of those 4 characteristics really sum up not only Black spirituality, but also, I would say, how Black spirituality is in some sense an antidote to our current culture, right? Not that our culture is bad, but it's a culture that's kind of frenetic and busy, and there's always something vying for our attention. You know, we always have a screen on or something in the background. And that idea of contemplation, of resting, of stillness, of seeing God pervading in everything is such an antidote to that, actually, our purpose is not to constantly be entertained, but rather to acknowledge and see the glory of God around us and to give voice to that. And that's where the joy comes in, right? Even though, as African Americans, we have been through really terrible times in our history, right? As slavery, the Jim Crow, all colonization, all the things that we think of that go along with the history of racism in our country, Black people continue to have joy and continue to have hope because we know that God is always with us, that He is near to us, that He cares about us, and that His goal for us is freedom and liberation, not only from our own sin, but from everything that oppresses us. And if that isn't the gospel, I don't know what is, right?
Right.
That is the gospel, that God cares so much about each one of us individually that He wants to set us free from anything that keeps us back from Him. We could go into more detail about the other two, but it's just such a wonderful way, and those aren't things that are unique to Black culture. It's lived out in a unique way for African Americans, but all of us can be contemplative and joyful and whole people and people who live in community. And I think Black culture has unique wisdom to shed light on how we can do that better as a universal church. But those are things that are true of all of us and that God is inviting us into as well.
Yeah. So just for our listeners, I'm going to quote here just to kind of underscore what Shannon and Marcia were saying. Black spirituality has taught us what it means to, quote, let go, end quote, and to, quote, to lean on God, end quote. In an age of competition and control, now this was the 1980s, we have learned to surrender to God's love and to let him work his power through us. In an age of technology and human engineering, they never knew what was coming. Our spiritual heritage has never let us forget that God takes us each by the hand and leads us in ways we might not understand. It is this sense of God's power in us that calls us to work for evangelization in the modern world. I think that's just beautiful, that whole concept of, I laugh at these older documents that speak of technology. They could never imagine us talking on Zoom together right now, right? Like this whole ability has come of age. And then the holistic part is that it isn't that sense of contrast in the Western way of either or, which is very Catholic because we're very both and. But as Americans, we really do get into that bad, good, evil, spiritual, whereas there's this holistic approach that's really beautiful that we could learn a lot from, right? That whole sense of our bodies are good. There isn't this negativity that it's very rooted in our Catholic tradition. So that's really beautiful. Of course, the joy that Marcia talked about. And then talk a little bit about community. What does it mean within the Black Catholic community? What does that mean for you, community?
So I think a key idea that's really important to understand when we're talking about any culture from the African diaspora, but Black Catholics in America in particular, is the idea of Ubuntu, which is roughly translates to I am because we are. And the idea is that my identity, my individual identity, is shaped by and found in the community around me. So if we think about right, just our being born, right? We're not just born into rugged individualism, right? I don't just appear in the world as an individual. I'm born into a family. Yeah. I'm born into a community, an extended family, a town, a city, wherever. And who I am is shaped by that, and who I become is shaped by that. That doesn't mean that the individual doesn't have their own needs or their own personality or things that they need beyond the community, but rather that it is through the community not only that we find ourselves, but that we have our meaning, right? Our work, our vocations, etc. They are aimed at all people, right? Not only for me. I'm not, we know what happens when we're not connected to community. We lived through it for the past 3 years with COVID.
Right.
When we are disconnected, we lose touch with who we are, right? That's why we saw this rise in mental health issues and all of these things. Yeah. And so, and it's a very Catholic understanding too, right? We don't experience our faith or our personhood in isolation. We don't even experience our relationship with God as just me and Jesus. It's me and Jesus and the community.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to come back from break and we'll continue our conversation with Shannon and Marcia about Black Catholic Christian or spirituality and the conference that's coming up.
Caring adults make all the difference in the lives of adolescents. Catholic Charities understands this, and our mentorship programs provide a free opportunity for young adults to spend time with volunteers who genuinely care about them. This program is ideal for youth aged 9 through 12 who may need support navigating the challenges of childhood and early adolescence. Our amazing volunteers serve as friends who help youth recognize their strengths and empower them to reach their full potential. Catholic Charities conducts a thorough background check on every volunteer, and our program coordinator closely monitors and supports every relationship. Mentoring is a fun after-school program that can help young adults build confidence and enjoy fun activities with their peers, too. To learn more, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655-7970 in Cook County and 847-782-4224 in Lake County. We're connecting youth with great role models. Join us today.
People always say, how can you spend your day with 3-year-olds? Seeing the changes that they go through and just the journey and how they grow, this is a very rewarding job. Even though at the end of the day, we're not the highest paid people on earth. And when I have a parent contact me and say, my child loves school, that to me, I'm setting that foundation for their love of learning. Because really, you are changing lives. You are molding lives.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Catholic Charities' Family Self-Sufficiency Program has assisted thousands of single parents who are working to become more self-sufficient through education and employment opportunities. Our experienced case managers accompany participants for up to 5 years on their journey to identify, address, and break down barriers to improving their quality of life and achieving meaningful goals for themselves and for their families. Professional, compassionate assistance is offered in a safe and trusting environment as participants develop the skills needed to become financially stable and able to support themselves. Every achievement starts with a decision to try. To learn more about Catholic Charities' Family Self-Sufficiency Program, call 847-782-4233 or visit CatholicCharities.net.
Can a dead man come back to life? Can a dead man come back to life? For this I know.
Welcome back to On the Way. I'm Beth White, the Director for Evangelization and Missionary Discipleship here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. And I'm continuing my conversation with Shannon Schmidt. And Marcia Lane McGee. Ladies, thank you for this amazing conversation. So Shannon was talking just before the break about the community and the sense of, as it says in here, in African culture, the, quote, I takes its meaning in the we. In other words, individual identity is to be found within the context of the community. And so this beautiful sense, we're in a culture now where there's not just rugged individualism, but it really is this sense of every person for themselves. There's this incredible loneliness, isolation, as Shannon was alluding to. Right after that is a sort of a reflection on the family. Marcia, what does it mean when you say family in the Black Catholic or the Black Church? What does that mean to you?
Well, it kind of means everybody. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like,
It means everybody. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something about Black folks. We have a lot of play cousins. And that means that when I say play cousins, like everyone is our family.
Yeah.
Right. It's our immediate family, and that's fine. But then there are the people that we embrace and that we take in, that we find a kinship with.
Yeah.
Right. That share the same culture and our values. I have a lot of family. Like I just said, I moved next door to my grandmother, and it's in the neighborhood where my mom grew up, and everyone on that block are my aunts and uncles, even though I haven't seen them since I was 15 maybe, but they all know who I am. Yeah. They all know how I was. They are all my family.
Right.
My grandfather taught us all, like, you never really meet a stranger.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important part of Black culture, is that we embrace each other and we help each other, and we recognize how we need each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge, when we say family, that's what we mean. It doesn't just mean my mother, my sister, my brother, any of that.
And that sometimes is a challenge in the Anglo church. The sense of family is seen as just nuclear family, maybe extended beyond nuclear to grandma and grandpa. But there's something beautiful here in this document when it talks about that. In a word, evangelization for Black Catholics is a celebration of the family, a renewal of the family, and a call to welcome new members into the family of God. Because as Marcia said, the documents talks about everyone's a part of the family, and you're inviting people into the family of the church. And good, bad, and ugly, right? Family isn't perfect. And so family is, and it's the messiness of church life too. But it's that sense of belonging and love that my office is always talking about, is creating this space. It's not perfection. You may not even always like each other, but you love each other, right? And that's it's just beautiful. Is there anything else from this document in particular, Shannon, that you would want? Oh, ecumenism. Shannon, speak a little bit about the document and ecumenism.
Sure. So one of the important concepts to realize about the Black Christian experience is that there exists an organization that we call the Black Church. It's not a formal organization, but rather they're the sort of traditionally Black Protestant denominations, as well as Black Catholics who experienced their own communities, whether it was through gathering in a parish that they happened to live in, like here in Chicago, or because they were excluded from other parishes and had to build their own schools and their own church buildings, and which frequently happened in the South during Jim Crow. Yeah. So these institutions were built as Black Christian institutions. And it is a shared experience, even though we don't share denominational beliefs. It's that shared Christian belief that unites across denominations. And this isn't necessarily something that happens in other cultures, because in Anglo cultures and even Latino cultures, there tends to be Catholics and everybody else, right? But in the Black experience, that shared faith and that shared experience of being Black Americans is much more important and central to uniting the community rather than creating differences. I know Marcia probably has something to say about this as well.
Please jump in, Marcia.
I always have something to say, so I don't know if that's really I don't know if that's a really fair assessment, because I always do. But no, Shannon, you touched on it, so thank you.
So just from the Director for Evangelization perspective, I've always found this to be the beautiful part of the Black Catholic community. The sense that you might be have some Baptists in your Black choir, and the Catholic ladies might be over in the Baptist choir. It doesn't matter. There's a shared activities, and to me that really is the heart of evangelization, because it's that sharedness of Jesus, the sharedness of the Christian faith. It's not what separates us; it's what unites us. And I think there's something really beautiful for us to learn as a whole church about that, with our brothers and sisters, regardless of their faith, of their theological background, that we share a common Jesus Christ and a faith in who He is and what He brought to our lives, or what He brings to our lives. So I want to shift gears now and just talk about the conference. Now, the two of you are going to do some presenting at the conference. Congratulations, ladies! This is exciting. Two of our Chicagoans going there to reflect us well. And so, Marcia, talk a little bit about what one of the talks you're going to be giving and why you felt that was an important talk to give.
Well, I'm really excited to give our talk. It has a very funny title. It talks about us being the neck of the church.
About what?
And I know that sounds so strange. I know that actually has Chicago roots if you think about it. There's in my, anyone's read our book, but in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which is, based in Chicago. So yay, bring it home. One of the characters, they're talking about how men might be the head of the church, but women are the neck because they turn the church which way to go.
Oh,
so we kind of talk about that.
Got it.
So see, yeah. And that kind of talks about how we can bring our own gifts and what we can do to like build this kingdom and turn the head, and see which way it needs to go. And so I'm really excited about that because we've talked about it before in our podcast, we wrote in our book, and now we get to actually present it and kind of talk about those ideas and those thoughts about what that looks like, applying that to the church.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't even, I think it sounds like an odd title, but everything about us has an odd title.
That's
our
okay.
Podcast,
it's
book,
marketing, right? People are like, what is that? Yeah.
I know. They're like, what is the neck of the church?
The neck of the church.
I was like, what is that? Like, come to our workshop and find out.
There you go. Exactly.
So I'm really, I'm very excited to be presenting that and talking that through that. And because it really helps us understand what we all have to bring to the table. And what are our gifts? And I think sometimes we forget that there is a difference between power and authority. Yeah. Right. So we may not have the authority. Like, I am not an ordained man. I'm not even a man. So I have a lot less authority in the church, but I have a whole heck of a lot of power. Yeah. Right. And so I might not be the head, but I'm a pretty good neck. So I can help. And I think that sometimes tapping into our gifts and recognizing the power of those gifts, I think that's really, really important. And I hope that that's a really good message that people take away.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. And Shannon, you guys are giving 3 presentations. So you want to talk about a different presentation?
Sure. We are also doing a session on the gifts of Black Catholics for the Church of today. And so the idea is to talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the characteristics of Black spirituality that we talked about today, and a couple other things that are drawn from what we've done in podcasting and in our book. And to really talk about how uniquely Black Catholics have gifts that directly speak to our time. We talked a little bit about that when we talked about the characteristics. But the idea, right, we live in a divisive time. We live in a time, as Beth and I talk about all the time in our work, we're in a change of ages, right? Yeah. We're moving from a time of wide sort of Christianity and Christendom to a more individualistic age, a more secular age. And again, none of this is bad, but it changes how the church needs to respond to our times and how we need to witness in our times. And so we're going to talk a little bit in that session about how Black Catholics have unique gifts for that, not only through our spirituality, but through our own experience, historical experience in the Black church, just as African Americans living in our country, and how we can help the whole church and the rest of our country as well to really break down those barriers, to build bridges and talk across the divide.
So when we come back from break, we're going to continue our conversation with Shannon and Marcia about the Black Catholic Congress. Thank you, ladies. We'll be back.
Community is core to Catholic Charities' founding mission. For more than 100 years, we have met people and families where they are, serving anyone in need, regardless of their faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. As our world absorbs the economic, political, and social aftershocks of the pandemic, 50% or more of the 6 million people living in Cook and Lake counties have little or no savings. They are a paycheck away from zero. We are deeply grateful to everyone in the Catholic Charities community who partners with us to alleviate the suffering of the people we serve and offer them a better path forward. We are witnessing a message of mercy and hope to a world very much in need. Learn more at CatholicCharities.net.
I am a seminarian.
The church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
For more than 20 years, Catholic Charities Adult Protective Services has been advocating for seniors who are the victims of abuse, neglect, confinement, or financial exploitation. With our partners at local, city, and state agencies, our trained case managers follow through on every concern that is brought to our attention in a cooperative way to ensure that our seniors are safe and protected. According to the Illinois Department on Aging, last year nearly 21,000 cases of elder abuse were reported in Illinois. Of these, only 5% were reported by seniors themselves. So raising awareness is an important part of this issue. If you are concerned about a senior you know, call 800-252-8966. That's 800-252-8966. With your help, we can stop elder abuse and look out for the seniors in our lives.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Welcome back to On the Way. I'm Beth White, your host for this morning, and I have with me Shannon Schmidt from the Archdiocese of Chicago here in Vicariate 6, and Marcia Lane McKee, and she is a podcaster, author, inspirational speaker, all that good stuff. And I could say the same thing about Shannon, but she has the quicker title that for here in the Archdiocese. So thank you, ladies. So we were just talking about a couple of your presentations at the Black Catholic Congress. So have you ladies gone before to the Congress?
No, this is our first time.
Oh, wow. So I was there 6 years ago. It's quite an amazing experience. I loved it. I honestly, one of our colleagues, she described me as the tall white woman, and she wanted to know if I was offended. And I said, no, because that's exactly the right way to describe me in this group, right? I think one of the only white people who wasn't ordained or a religious, right? So it was awesome. I had so much fun. I'm sending Willa this year from our office, so that's awesome. You guys will have a blast. That's intimidating to have 3 workshops at something you've never been to before. Wow, that's impressive.
It's not so much, I think.
No?
I think we're used to speaking and educating people about things. And,
Good. Yeah.
I mean, we have podcasts.
That's true. That's true.
It's currently on hiatus, but we have it.
There you go.
Just, it's just me with my friend, and we're going to tell people stuff.
Yeah.
Except this time we have to dress a little bit nicer and not do it over Zoom.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And you'll get to meet, or just see good friends, and also meet a lot of people, because this is a conference that draws people from all over the country, right? And and folks send delegations from each diocese, and it's learnings that they then bring back to their dioceses, and really try to implement some of the learnings that have come out of it into action in the communities. What excites you about it? What are you looking forward to? I love that it's all about evangelization, I have to say. It was not about that 6 years ago, so I'm very excited to hear that that's the topic. So Shannon, I'll ask you first, and then Marcia second. What excites you about going to the conference?
I'm excited to go learn some things myself, right? In the midst of presenting. So this is professional development for me, which is lovely. And over in Vicariate 6, we have the majority of the traditionally Black parishes in the Archdiocese. So, and we are taking 70 people or plus people
my
from the
goodness, that's
Chicago for our
awesome.
delegation. Yeah. So just to like
Wow.
celebrate our Archdiocese and how much joy and how many people from our Archdiocese and
that's
our Black
awesome.
parishes are really thriving.
Yeah, right, right. And for those our listeners, a lot of our Black Catholic communities, our parishes, went through probably the hardest unifications in the entire diocese. Not to take away anybody's unification, how hard it was, but this is the community that, by and large, closed the most parishes. There was one grouping that had 5 churches, and 4 closed, and 1 remains. Right? Is that right? And we've had sort of 3 parishes, 1 church remains, 2 closed. So there was a lot of a real sacrifice that happened, and the people chose that. There was a real sense of we've got to be realistic about our resources and what we can do, and really for the future of the church, right? And so just really honoring that and saying that it is a joy to hear that you have over 70 people going, and all that's behind us. And so it's sort of helping parishes do the healing that needs to happen and live into the new reality of where they're at. Marcia, what are you excited about the Congress for?
Well, I'm excited to visit with friends that we have from around the country that Shannon and I both have in common. But I'm also really excited not only to make connections with national Black Catholics, but knowing how many people are coming from the Archdiocese and getting to make those connections.
Yeah.
I just moved back to the city, and I moved into Vicariate 6.
Yeah.
So like I've now for the first time in my life going to a Black parish, which is like, oh, that's kind of great. But getting to make those connections that I can really actually bring home.
Right.
That I can make connections and start things and collaborate a little bit better. So I'm very excited. I don't know if you've noticed this about me. I don't mind meeting new people. I get kind of excited about that prospect. So there we are.
There you go. It's going to be a perfect place. People at conferences, I find, are very open to whoever sits down next to them, right? That's the fun part about a conference. So just to circle back to a couple themes that maybe are a little harder themes that I want to talk about, especially where our country is today. In the document, and I'm sure that I remember at the conference us dealing with this, was the 2 themes of sort of reconciliation, the need for reconciliation, and social justice. And those 2 things go hand in hand together. They can't be separated. Reconciliation only comes when you have justice, right? That and justice can only come about when there's reconciliation. If hate persists, if anger persists, you can't actually come to reconciliation, right? So I would love, there's a lot of divisiveness in our culture today, in our country today, and not just our country, but in the world today. And so I think we have a lot to learn. This document is a beautiful reflection on the need to honor what has happened, but also to forgive, right? And justice to come with that. So perhaps each of you could speak a little bit to that. I'll start with Marcia. What are your thoughts on those 2 topics?
So I want to say that you're right. We can't have one without the other, but we can't have either one of those if we don't first have the truth.
Yes.
And I think that we
Thank
don't
you.
recognize that part.
Yes,
right?
Truth.
Recognizing the truth.
Which is in question now, right? We never, truth wasn't something that was in question before, and now it's like truth is in question. So, yes, go ahead.
And I think that, and when I say that, about telling the truth, it's also acknowledging the truth.
Yes.
No matter how hard it is for anyone. Whenever you want to forgive someone, you can't forgive. If I'm asking someone for forgiveness, I am not asking on something vague. Right?
Right.
It's a very much, I
specific.
know I did this.
Yes.
I know I allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
right? And whether and that is a really true ask, right? In confession, you don't make a good confession unless you do what? Tell the truth, right? Like you can't reconcile any of that. And I think that that's something that we have to remember in both of those things. That first we have to recognize the truth and sit with it, right? And then that's how we can act more justly, because we know what we've done wrong and recognize what we've done wrong. And if we continue to say, well, it wasn't that bad, or maybe it wasn't quite like this, there won't ever really be any true reconciliation. There won't ever be any true justice. I think that in the document, when they talk about recognizing about our history, the history of America and what that is, I think that it kind of hits on that. Yeah. Right? Like, you don't come face to face with a Black man or Black woman in any aspect of history. And I think that we need to recognize what the role of Black men and Black women were in every aspect of history in order to reconcile that and not move on, but move forward and have a more just conclusion, or, do you know what I mean? Resolution.
Right. Well, and part of the pain comes from not acknowledging the truth, right? So that was so long ago, or that hasn't contributed to the systemic issues, or, not to get into all the politics, but that's the pain, is the lack of naming the truth. Shannon?
Yeah, I think that's really key for moving forward. And I think our own faith provides us sort of with a paradigm of that, right? Yeah. We talk about this in our book. Marcia is this is going to sound very familiar to her, I'm sure, right? But one of the beautiful things about Black culture, in particular Black Christians, is the way that we have transformed all of our wounds into things that are joyful parts of our culture, right? So if you think about soul food, or traditionally Black Southern foods, right? Many of them, things like chitlins, if you know what that is, right? Or greens, all of these things that are traditionally eaten, were actually forged out of a lack, right? Of not having enough, and trying to make, as Marcia would call it, sustenance out of scraps. And now, right, Southern/soul food is really seen as like a beautiful, like, American cuisine that everybody wants to eat, right? Like, that's what we all were like, yeah, that's what we want for Christmas and holidays and all of that. And in the same way as Christians, right, we know that the story of the resurrection is one of turning our wounds into glory, right? Yeah. We cannot have the joy of the resurrection, the euphoric joy of the resurrection, without the deep, deep despair of Good Friday. And like, if we could have the world a different way, would we maybe not want Jesus to have to suffer on the cross? Yes. But we have to sit through and live with the crucifixion in order to have the great joy of the resurrection. And so as Americans, we need to do that too, right? We need to sit through and live with the terrible, horrible parts of our history that we would wish to hide, in order to really find solutions that are going to address them. And we can debate about what those solutions are, right? But if we ignore the truth and the hurt, then we can never actually experience that joy that comes with transforming those wounds into something new.
And that's, I think, the hard stuff is hard for Americans. I'm just going to name it. I think it's easy. I was thinking about this recently. I was thinking about, the social justice concept of the babies going down the river, and it's not enough just to keep pulling babies out of the river. You got to go up to the head of the river and figure out why on earth babies are being thrown in the river. That's actually social justice, is not just doing all the Band-Aiding and pulling out the babies. It's actually going to the root causes and saying, wow, what is it causing this to happen, and try to go at fixing that. And I think that's what you're speaking about there, is this sense of it isn't about blaming anyone. It's about we're not blaming people that the babies are in the water. We're going back to the root and saying, what is causing the babies? Maybe that's just a cultural thing that they learn from somewhere they throw the babies in the water. We don't know, right? And it's not good for the babies, but they're like, oh, this is what we've always done. It's always been this way. And we're like, no. We got to go figure out what's going on, right? So I think that's the honoring of it, is naming these things and trying to fix it without blaming, but putting brilliant minds to it and saying, let's figure this out together, right? Like, it isn't about us versus them. It's trying to figure it out. And that's about as Christian as it gets. We got to go to another break, ladies. We're very break-filled today. We'll be back to finish our conversation in a few minutes.
Catholic Charities has had the privilege of helping people in need in Cook and Lake County for more than 100 years. We would like to take this opportunity to thank our frontline workers who, despite the unprecedented challenges of the past 2 years, continue to excel at their jobs every day. From the warehouse staff members who pack boxes of nutritious foods for low-income seniors, to the dedicated WIC employees who have remained open for families with children under the age of 5, to our volunteers and restaurant partners who ensure that meals are available for those experiencing hunger, to our service coordinators and our professional counselors who continue their vital work in innovative ways, to our food pantry staff, and to all those who work at Catholic Charities Call Center, finding solutions for every person who reaches out to us for help. Charity is at the heart of all you do, and we salute you.
People always say, how can you spend your day with 3-year-olds? Seeing the changes that they go through and just the journey and how they grow, this is a very rewarding job. Even though at the end of the day, we're not the highest paid people on earth. And when I have a parent contact me and say, my child loves school, that to me, I'm setting that foundation for their love of learning, because really you are changing lives, you are molding lives.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
At Catholic Charities, we want to remind you that we are here for anyone who is a victim of domestic violence or anyone who has a concern about someone they think may be a victim. Domestic violence affects millions of people each year, both women and men, of every race, religion, culture, and economic status. It includes physical, psychological, and emotional abuse, inflicted in both subtle and overt ways. The impact on children can be devastating. If you or someone you know are victims of domestic violence and you are looking for a place for healing and recovery, call us at 773-935-3434 in Cook County and 224-430-4977 in Lake County. A safer, happier tomorrow can begin today.
Welcome back to On the Way. I'm Beth White, and I'm your host this morning for our show from the Office for Evangelization, Missionary Discipleship. And I have with me Shannon Schmidt and Marcia Lane McGee. I still have that COVID short-term memory fog, so we'll get there. And we're just talking today about the African-American experience, the Black Catholic experience, and the Black Catholic Congress that's coming up this week, and exciting for the two of you to be presenting 3 different sessions in your first experience. But before we left for break, and we're going to finish up the show in this last segment, we're talking about social justice and truth and reconciliation and how important that is. And, you know, I was thinking, I was at the Congress in 2017, and the world has changed a lot since then, right? A lot. It's changed. It's kind of extraordinary how the world has changed since then, with the pandemic and George Floyd and all of the different backlash now. And it's just kind of like a different world. What do you think, both of you? I'll go to Shannon first. I'll give you a moment to think about it, Marcia. What do you think that the Black church as a whole, not just Catholic, but the Black church, what do you think the Black church has to offer this country in terms of healing and in terms of helping us to evangelize and to share the gospel in a way that can reach people in this new missionary age, as we would call it? Christendom is dying, right? And people are turning away from the faith. And what do you think the Black Catholic Church or the Black church could offer this country? Shannon?
Yes. So, interestingly enough, we were just looking together at some statistics that came out from the Pew Research on Black spirituality and Black religiosity last year. And they did a particular section on Black Catholics because it was one of the first times they could get data on Black Catholics.
Yeah.
And one of the striking things about that research is that for Black Catholics or Black Christians in general, confronting issues of oppression, specifically racism and sexism, are extremely important parts of their faith. They even rated it more highly than believing in God, which was interesting. Okay. We won't get into that, but statistics are weird. But I think that calls out something that is true in the Black church and that we can also bring to the wider Christian church, that we recognize that in order for people to be open to meeting Jesus, in order for people to be able to flourish and live the lives that God intends for them, we have to first address their needs. We have to first address the issues of justice. And we know this, right? We can't preach to someone about Jesus when they're starving, right? We know that in our heads. But sometimes when we think about deeper issues of justice, the unseen things, the unseen needs that people have, in order for them to be whole and whole humans, we forget about this. And so I think when we're talking about the world we live in today, that intersection between social justice and evangelization is that we have to meet people's needs. And one of the things that I love from the document, and I'm going to paraphrase here, is that they say, right, when we serve others, when we promote justice, when we work for justice and we meet their needs, we are being Christ for them. And that is not a precursor to evangelization, they say. It is evangelization, right? We are being Christ for them, and they are meeting Christ through us. And so I think that is a huge lesson that we can teach each other.
And that's different from, sometimes we run into and I'm just going to name it, sometimes we have I'm going to volunteer today and serve a meal. And that isn't what we're talking about. I mean, it's lovely. Thank you for doing that, if that's all you can offer. And I'm not disparaging that. But meeting Christ in the other is really, you have to be letting Christ work through you and you have to pray and be open to however that other person is bringing Christ to you as well, right? And whatever that manifests. And that isn't always easy. Marcia, how would you like to answer that question?
I just kind of want to touch on that a little bit. So, and I don't know how this is going to seem, and you're right, the world has changed since 2017, since Congress. For Black Americans, it hasn't changed, right? The way everyone else sees it has changed.
Yep.
And I think that is really important to acknowledge.
No, thank you.
The world now is no different than the world was for me then. It's a little bit more stressful because, well, not more stressful, but there are more people who know about it. And it's kind of like it is another burden of education. And I don't know if that sounds, and here's the thing, I can choose to take it on or not. Like, that is my own choice if I'm going to do emotional labor or not, for the edification of other people and then all the people to come, right? Like how they're going to treat all the people to come. So when we talk about how the Black church or Black people can help with ushering that in, I think Shannon made it very, very clear about making sure that you know our needs, right? And making sure that you know these are not these are not new needs. They are the same needs that have persisted over time. We've always been exposed to this. Help us carry our water, right? We may not be able to teach you what our burden is unless you are being willing to share what our burden is in the way that you can, right? Like if I've got like 5 pails of water and 2 arms, like help me carry this water, understand what that is, because you can't really serve me unless you know me, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't know what I need, you can't get me what I need. Right. So Catholics United for Black Lives, an organization Shannon and I were founding members of, our motto, it's in Latin, but I know I'm not going to say it, I don't know how to pronounce it in Latin, but in English, it is charity without justice is dead. And I think that sometimes we forget that. Like you say, like it is so great, those people who help out one time, right? That you can do charity, but if you don't have you're not justice minded behind that, right? You could go to the edge of the river and pluck those babies out, right? But if you're not willing to go upstream and figure out what's going on, then that is dead, right? It's like, yeah, there are people who are needed right here, right? Right. But if you are not willing to fix the root of the problem, if you're not willing to put justice behind your charity, mm-hmm. Then you're also not willing to learn.
So
how to best serve me. I think, well, not just me. You can serve me all you want. It's fine.
I think the greater learning, though, is from my perspective, is that no, you're right. Nothing has changed, right, for you. However, I think the Black Catholic, the Black Christian community, the Black church recognizes they know what suffering is. You know what it is, and you're able to identify that and bring mm-hmm. the healing and the justice to others as well. It's within your community, but also you bring to the larger church a voice for recognizing that you understand the loneliness and the deaths of despair that are regardless of. I mean, that is like across, I don't know the word, it's like not persisting, it's like permeating our entire country, regardless of socioeconomic, cultural, like it's kind of crazy the level at which isolation and your tradition of family, everyone belongs, looking out for each other, everybody on the same street is a part of the same family. I mean, that is incredible gift for us as a culture, as a larger community, and to recognize that suffering, when you've suffered, I mean, that's the whole point, right? That's the whole spiritual transformation, is when someone suffered, that you come to know who this Christ is because he suffered for us. And so I thank you both so much for your time, for your energy, for your passion, for what you're bringing to the church, the Black church, and also to the larger church, your voices. What's your book? Give a plug. What's the book?
It's called Fat Luther, Slim Pickens, a Black Catholic Celebration of Faith, Tradition, and Diversity.
Excellent.
Yeah, see, another weird title, but it's fine.
Awesome.
We're excited to have it.
Awesome. And then you guys said you're on hiatus with plaid skirts and basic black, but when were you coming back?
Yes.
When are you coming back?
Oh, before this year is over.
Okay,
there's
good.
a lot more this year left.
Right. And you can always catch up on the podcast,
our lives
right?
kind of changed, and so we were like, we're going to take a minute.
Yeah.
So,
a lot of people are doing that.
But we do want to come back, and we've got some great stuff lined up.
Great. And maybe you can tell some stories about being at the conference and Congress.
Yes.
You could get some clips and things like that. Just giving you little ideas there. Yeah. So thank you both so much. So before we close out, I think we're at the 30-second mark or anything. Anything that either of you want to offer before we close out to folks that are listening?
Pray for renewal.
There you go. Pray for renewal. Pray for renewal. Thank you, Whites.
Yes.
So
pray for renewal.
Pray for
I'm with
renewal.
You. I like to offer that.
Absolutely. And I would say learn. Read what we have seen and heard. You can Google it, look it up, what we have seen and heard. It's the 40th anniversary. Take a read of it, reflect on it. It is as Catholic as it gets, and it's reflective of a community that really has a lot to teach us. And it's one of those evergreen documents that speak to you. So thank you so much. So it's been a pleasure, and God bless.
Thank you.